Hi everyone, welcome to Line Shape Form. Today we're taking one single pose and bringing it to life across 3 unique characters using 3, 5, and 7 head proportions. So, let's dive right in. We'll start with the 3 head proportion. To help you follow along, I've prepared a front view reference for each character so you can see how the proportions stack. I'll be using the Loomis method for the head and simple forms for the body before diving into details. Make sure to watch through to the end, as I'll be dropping crucial construction tips throughout the entire process. Once you master these forms, you can easily adapt them to create your own unique characters. So let's slow things down and start drawing. First, let's set the total height of our figure. For this version, we'll divide that height into 3 equal units. If you want to be precise with a ruler, choose a total height that's easily divisible by 3. I highly recommend marking these boundaries in advance, especially if you're working on paper, so your character doesn't accidentally grow too big and run off the edge of the canvas. You can draw the head whichever way you prefer, but for this practice, I'll be using the Loomis method. If you're already familiar with it, go ahead and draw a circle slightly smaller than that total head unit. If you want to be precise, try dividing that first head height into 7 equal parts. The diameter of your circle should then span across 6 of those parts, leaving just that last little unit at the bottom for the jaw. Next, we'll set the angle of the head by drawing a cross to show which way the face is looking. This will be a 3/4 view with the head tilted down slightly. As you can see on our reference guide here, this cross represents the intersection where the vertical and horizontal midlines meet on the face. We do the same on the side of the head. You don't have to draw this, but this line represents the vertical axis of the sphere. Because the head is tilted down from this angle, we can see a little bit of the top of the head. Now we'll draw a circle on the side of the head. Think of this as cutting off the side, since the side plane of a human head is flat. As for the size of this circle, I'm just going to eyeball it for this character. Because this stylized head is much wider than a realistic adult head, this side circle will be significantly smaller. Let's add the facial markings along our vertical midline. Since we already know our total head height, we know exactly where the chin sits. The space between the brow line and the chin is like a piece of paper wrapping around the front of the sphere. This is where your facial features will fit. To map out the rest of the features, we just need to divide this brow to chin space in half, and then have both of those sections again. As for the top 2 markings, just take the height of one of these new sections and repeat it twice above the brow line. Now, you can refer to our front view markings to place the facial features, but keep in mind that with stylized anime characters, artists often bend the rules. For instance, large eyes are often placed slightly higher in a 3/4 or side view than they are from the front. This is because placing them too low from these angles can make the character look too infantile or young. So the overall balance is always more important. I will also place the eyes slightly higher. As you can see here, I'm also placing the right eye far out to the side to spread the features out and balance the canvas of the face. The ears approximately span from the nose line to the upper eyelid. Just follow the curvature of the head from those points back toward the jawline to place them. And with that, we have constructed the head. Once you feel comfortable with the Loomis method, you can skip a lot of these steps, use just a few guidelines here and there, and draw more intuitively. However, this method is incredibly helpful when drawing difficult angles from imagination. So, practicing it with easier angles first is highly beneficial in my humble opinion. Next, we move on to the body. The first hurdle is the neck placement. Because chibi necks are so thin compared to the massive head, they can be really hard to place correctly. But the neck is the essential bridge connecting everything together. Getting this placement wrong can completely throw off your entire body structure, so make sure to map it out and get it right before adding any details. So here you just saw me draw the curve of the body with this red line. The right leg will be stretched back slightly, while the body weight rests mostly on the left leg. For the torso itself, I use the popular bean shape. When drawing a pose, you always want to consider the overall silhouette to make it look dynamic. In this case, I'm extending the curve of the front torso right into the front of the leg. Connecting these lines gives the entire body a beautiful, continuous flow. And always think about the parts that are obscured by overlapping. Here, parts of the left leg are hidden behind the right leg, but I still draw through the form and map it out roughly. Knowing exactly where that hidden knee sits ensures that the visible parts actually make sense. It's the same with clothing. You want to understand the obscured body shapes and basic forms underneath before drawing anything on top. Again, with practice, you might be able to skip a lot of these steps. But until you reach that level, regard these as exercises for mastering shapes and forms from imagination at any angle. Usually, I would sketch the arms and clothes first, and only refine the body parts that aren't obscured. But for this drawing, I decided to refine the entire body first. That way, if you want to give your character a different outfit that exposes more of the body, you already have the correct anatomy mapped out underneath. The hands will be refined a little later. With our head and body mapped out, we can finally start adding the hair and clothing. With characters like these, you'll often see the clothes puffed up for extra volume. But I'm going to keep them fairly close to the body for this design. With shorter jackets like these that have a ribbed waistband, the elastic naturally rides up above the buttocks toward the waistline. Because of that, we're going to place the hem higher in the back than in the front. Alright, that's it for this character. If you were drawing along, how did yours turn out? I would love to hear all about it in the comments. Now, let's move on to the next version. The 5 head-to-body ratio. In case you're wondering, for simplicity's sake, I called this a 5-head ratio. But the character is actually around a 5.2 head-to-body ratio, even without the hair and shoes. We're using the Loomis method again to map out the head. This time, the head is a bit narrower than our 3-head character, which means the side circle needs to be slightly bigger to cut off more of that side width. As you can see, you can always use the dimensions of a front view as a reference to figure out exactly how big or small that side circle needs to be. The rest of the steps remain the same. Even though stylized facial features, like the eyes, nose, and mouth, might shift from realistic proportions, the vertical midline markings are still incredibly useful. As long as you know how those markings translate from a front view, they'll always serve as a perfect guide for placing your features. From the front view, we can see that the ears span from the nose up to the middle of the eyes. Once we've positioned those features on our 3/4 view, we can use them as landmarks to place the ears. Just remember that because the ears sit on the side of the head, they have to follow the perspective of the head as it wraps from the front plane to the side plane. The 5-head body is generally more defined than the 3-head body, so we want to consider the angle of the body, along with the tilt of the shoulders and hips when constructing the torso. When drawing a pose like this, you need to think about whether the weight is distributed equally or resting mostly on one leg. In this case, Shifting the weight to the left leg causes the left hip to push slightly higher. Identifying that weight-bearing leg is crucial because it determines the character's center of gravity, ensuring they look stable on the ground rather than falling over. To counterbalance that hip tilt, the shoulders will shift as well. In fact, both shoulders are lifted up a bit here to give the pose some attitude. While a shoulder tilt can technically parallel the hip tilt, doing so changes the dynamic, creating a totally different, more stylized vibe compared to a standard relaxed stance. When drawing clothes, it's important to think about the level of detail, realism, and folds you want to add. There needs to be an overall balance that suits the chosen art style. For a stylized character like this 5-head version, keeping the folds and details fairly minimal works incredibly well. Okay, we're done with this version as well. Now let's move on to our final style. The 7 head-to-body ratio. Again, this is actually closer to a 7.3 or 7.4 head-to-body ratio. I'm just calling it a 7-head ratio for simplicity's sake. If you want a strict 7-head ratio, just move up the crotch and shorten the torso, legs, and arms a little bit, so that the heels land right on that 7th head mark. Once again, we start with the Loomis method. For this 7-head figure, we can stick right to the original, realistic head proportions and feature placement. We map out the sphere just like before, but notice how much larger the side circle is here compared to the chibi. It now spans perfectly from the brow line down to the nose line. Since we're adding clothes, it's not strictly necessary to fully refine the anatomy underneath. However, doing it is great practice, and it's incredibly helpful if you ever want to change up the outfit to something that emphasizes the body's curves a bit more. I know a lot of people struggle with drawing hands, and I'll be releasing more videos dedicated to that topic in the future. But remember, if you can break a complex form down into its basic geometric shapes, you can map out a solid construction before adding details. Mastering this habit is the secret to learning how to draw anything you want, from any angle. With a character style like this, you have the option to either pack in the details and line work, or go the opposite direction and keep things completely minimal. You can even mix and match. You could add high detail to the hair while keeping the clothing folds simple. Just remember to always step back, evaluate the overall balance, and make sure every element fits together cohesively as a whole. Having said that, every single line should serve a purpose, whether it's to add depth, dimension, or volume to the drawing. You want to avoid randomly scratching chaotic lines just to fill up space. Instead, each line should define the flow of the hair, the shape of the skull underneath, or where a shadow falls. A great trick is to break the hairstyle down into large sections first, imagining them as solid clumps flowing in a specific direction before you ever add individual strands. The same rule applies to folds. A great artist is always observant in everyday life, taking mental notes of the shapes and forms around them. We want to place our clothing folds precisely where the body compresses or bends, like the fabric pulling across the lower back or wrinkling at the waist. At the same time, we want to keep it visually appealing, which means figuring out where the primary folds should go and which minor ones to leave out. Always keep that overall balance in mind and take a step back to ensure the lines complement each other and work together beautifully. For her outfit, I'm picturing high-waisted pants. Watch how the fabric of her top interacts with the waistband. From this view, the shirt drapes down her stomach and then columns over the edge of the pants. We want to draw a subtle bulge right here, a bit of cloth overhanging the waistband to show the weight of the fabric resting on that seam. And with that, we're pretty much finished. I'm just darkening a few lines and adding some finishing touches to wrap it all up. If you found this breakdown helpful, Don't forget to drop a like and subscribe for more drawing tutorials. I really hope you had fun drawing these different proportions with me today. Thank you so much for watching. Take care and have a great day.